So let's discuss this term gaslighting. Okay. Now, according to Psychology Today, gaslighting is an insidious form of manipulation and psychological control. Victims of gaslighting are deliberately and systematically fed false information that leads them to question what they know to be true, often about themselves. They may end up doubting their memory, their perception, and even their sanity. Now, why is it that we are discussing this term gaslighting while we're discussing this new episode of Love and Marriage Huntsville, season 6, episode 28? It's called Innocent Until Proven Kiki. Now, unless I read it wrong, okay, that was the title of the episode, but I don't think I read it wrong. Okay. Maybe it was just wrong where I watched it. Now I don't know. What I do know is, okay, here we are. And here we go. All right, so we start this episode literally where we left off. And we start this episode with a double date that is happening betwixt the Scotts as well as the Beasleys. The Beasleys and the Steels, I guess I should say. Stormi Steele and Courtney Beasley. Okay. Anyway, all I know is that Stormi is trying to escape, okay? Like she is leaving the escape room. And, Letitia is like, how are you going to invite us out to this Ponderosa and then leave? And Stormi's like, well, y'all was over an hour late anyway. So the Scots feel like Stormi can dish it, but she cannot take it. And Marsau suggests they leave it as just them being passersby if they cannot stop calling each other names, i.e., Stormi calling him a bitch. Now, Stormi is good on them at all in general, especially on their energy. And she was actually good after her last bout with Letitia, okay, when they discussed the website. We will later find out that Stormi is still feeling a certain type of way about having to sort of coerce Letitia into taking accountability or apologizing for the website kerfuffle that they found themselves in, wherein whomever, the web developer, whomever, ended up putting Stormi's information in the contact forms on one of the important elements of Letitia's daughter's product's website. Okay, I hope I have caught you up for those of you guys who have missed it. So my thought is, I'm wondering if Stormi may have felt a certain type of way when she left that interaction with Letitia, and then sort of like once this new thing occurred, this new argumentation occurred between them, and them being an hour and a half late, I feel like she was probably just over it. You know what I'm saying? Because it sounds like, based on the filming history that we've seen, is that the Scots are usually typically very late. Okay. Now, this happens a lot in filming. It sounds like, because it always sounds like people are like, late for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because maybe production is holding them back. I don't know if it's just because they're not timely. I don't know what the cause of it may be. I've heard varying things, so we just have to kind of chalk it up to whatever it is at this point. Right now, it looks like it's the Scots' fault, right? So I feel like it's all of these things bubbling up for Stormi, maybe, because otherwise I'm confused. But yeah, I mean, and Letitia's like, well, don't invite us if you don't really like my energy. I mean, and that's valid. And Stormi feels like Marsau, this is where we first get our term gaslighting introduced. She feels like Marsau is gaslighting her. I don't know if Marsau is gaslighting her as much as I feel like he's antagonizing her, because he referenced something that Stormi once said, that it's in her culture to, call people the B word when they're in a situation, right? Now, gaslighting, to me, I don't really feel like that fits the definition of gaslighting as much as it does antagonizing. Okay. So I kind of disagree with her on that. And Stormi, they leave, and Letitia's like, I don't want no more new friends, because the dinner with, Chris and Nell Fletcher didn't go well, and this is not going well either. And then, so you kind of have to wonder, is it everybody else or is it me? Like, I mean, that's a valid question. I don't know. I'm just kind of watching it all play out, and I haven't made that that assertion yet. I haven't really quite cleared it yet in my mind, so I don't know. Marsau feels like he's losing associates and finding peace, and that is life, okay? And they agree that they are going on no more new dates with no more new folks. They're going to keep it to the originals, okay? Now, is a fine time to talk about also what I would rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10 because we didn't get into that earlier. I was trying to confirm the title and my notes as well as just getting into some things about the episode in general. And I neglected to do that. So let's do it now. On a scale of 1 to 10, I think I would rate this episode and I would give it an 8, a solid 8. I feel like it was good. A couple of things I didn't I guess a couple of things I would have preferred. Okay. I would have preferred that we see the getting ready to go on the trip to Houston and not just being plopped into Houston. But I did appreciate the introduction to Houston where we got the graphics and, the names for everybody. I did like the creativity there. So I might actually give it an 8.5. You know what I'm saying? I might give it that. All right, let me know what you were rated in the chatterization down below. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, for those of you guys who are new here, a 10 obviously is the best of the best, and a 1 would be the worst of the worst. All right, so the next scene that we get is a scene that I'm tired of talking about, okay? And I'm tired of talking about it from this sense of I don't think that there's really a lot that's going to change with Maurice, but there does seem to be a glimmer of hope at the end of this scene. But I think it's just the getting there that's just so frustrating in tandem with what we know is coming up in the episode. Okay. And what we know is coming up in the episode is going to be a discussion of the aftermath of Maurice's interview with Carlos King. And we're going to discuss what he said in that interview that made it go viral. Okay. And the backlash that he got and the backlash that Kimmi had to withstand as a result of it. All right. But before we get there, we got to get through this sex therapy scene. Okay. He still feels like her body is working, so her mind need to catch up to her body. And y'all know how I feel about it. I don't need to go back and beat this horse down anymore. I feel like it's callous, careless, and selfish. However, comma.org, here we are. All right. And they do have the therapist come to their house, and the therapist works with them individually and then separately, and then brings them back together, which I think is a great way to probably get this scenario like really under control. And the therapist basically says that this is about intimacy and how they each receive intimacy in different ways and what they can do to kind of reconnect. So the therapist ultimately makes Kimmi straddle Maurice, and then they are to be within 5 centimeters of each other's faces, and then they are to whisper sweet nothings at each other, essentially, for 5 minutes a day, okay? Listen, whatever works. Whatever works, so I don't have to hear him tell her that it's all in your mind ever again, okay? Um, a couple of things that he said that really bothered me in this conversation. He equated Kimmi's issues with her libido as a result of, going through cancer and the treatments. He equates that to, a person who has an eating disorder. However, when he described what the eating disorder was, what he actually described was body dysmorphia. I don't know why this bothered me because I think it kind of still goes to his lack of sensitivity surrounding the subject and the total lack of empathy for people who actually have eating disorders by also describing it as something that is completely different. Having an eating disorder could be related to some form of body dysmorphia, but ultimately it is a condition that I feel like is probably even more severe due to the bodily harm that can be done in the process, right? Not to mention psychological. But I was just like, bro, like, just stop. Just stop talking. Like, really, just stop talking. Because whenever Maurice talks, I feel like he gets himself in trouble. I just stick to taxes and lawyering, and I think you should be good. And maybe, just maybe, start fixing some things around the house, okay? Because they get into a conversation about love language, and he learns that Kimmi's love language is acts of service. So because she had been a single woman for so long and a single mother, she had to do everything. And so now, as a result, she loves it when he, gets back to fixing things like she thought he was going to do in the first place. They discussed that last episode, I think, if you missed it. So I'm just kind of like, and he's like, oh my God, a revelation. I'm like, bro, no, she's been saying this to you. You ain't heard her, okay? You needed somebody else to confirm it all for you before you actually believed her, which is the sad part. Anyway, down to the Juke joint. Nell and Chris have invited everybody for a hoedown and a hootenanny, complete with cowboy hats. Courtney and Stormi arrive first, followed by Kimmi and Maurice, then Letitia and Maurice, then Letitia and Marsau. Marsau and Letitia both speak to Courtney and Stormi, and Courtney feels like they're trying to get a reaction out of her. Now, at this point, I feel like Stormi's probably a little bit too on the defensive at this point, because I do feel like I don't think that they were trying to come for her or trying to sneak her in any way, shape, or form. I just felt like they were trying to be polite, right? Because I think in a group setting, like I'm of two minds, right? I gotta admit to you guys, I'm of two minds. The one mind being like, if I don't like you, I ain't gonna speak to you, right? But the other mind of me is like social graces. Like the other day, I ran into somebody that has done somebody I know very, very wrong. I'm not even gonna get into it, but the person is going ham, and essentially, in my opinion, bullying somebody that I know. And so running into this person is like, for me, like I have lost respect for you because I feel like you're doing too much at this moment, right? I think it's one thing to sever a relationship, and it is a complete different thing to try to run this person into the ground and make it so that don't nobody else talk to them. I don't like stuff like that. And so anyway, um running into this person, outside of me having a direct conversation with this person about it, because it really ain't my business, but I still want to do it because I kind of want to tell this person, like, yo, you being like, you doing too much, like let it go, like ease up, because it's making you look bad at this point. But instead of doing that, I have chosen in the moment, in crowded spaces, like, let me just be polite, because at the end of the day, like, you ain't do it to me. But at the end of the day, I'm also trying to maintain my own social graces and my own etiquette and my own, morality when I'm out and about. But I could also be the type of person that if I really don't like you, it's just kind of ignore you in general. But I definitely ain't running up to you to speak. I'll speak when spoken to. That's it. And it ain't that many people that I don't dislike a lot of people. I just don't. I don't even have people in my aura that, like, in my spatial vicinity that I don't like, because it's just I feel like God is protecting me. Okay. Like, I just feel like that. Anyway, and it's also how I look at people in life and things like that too. So there's a little bit of a little bit of a digression there, but I felt like I needed to communicate that to really hit the point home of what I'm trying to say. So anyway, um, Melody arrives next, and she's annoyed when Martell arrives, and Nell announces that everyone is going to the Houston, and the whole group has to go. Melody, of course, has her reservations, and she just wants to be in a different part of the house with a lock on the door, so Mr. Martell can't come banging on her door in the middle of the night trying to get some. It wasn't said in the episode, but I'm saying it because I know that's what everybody's thinking. Okay? All right. The Whitlows are also going to be invited, but we already know that they didn't quit, so it's neither here nor there for that. Stormi and Courtney are still looking a bit off, like to the side and whatnot. And Kimmy's like, y'all good? Like, didn't y'all settle things? I mean, this is amongst the group, right? She's like, didn't y'all settle things? Basically pointing out the group of Letitia, Marsau, and Stormi and Courtney. And Marsau's like, we're all good. Because I feel like Marsau and Letitia just been on the show long enough to know, like, we got to get along to get along. We got to get along to get this paycheck. We got to get along to make a good show. So that's that. Stormi's probably at the point where she's like, I don't really need this money. And she ain't been on the show long enough to have to go through all that. So I kind of feel like they still kind of new to, like, go along to get along type of situation. And she just may not be a get along to get along type of person. You know what I'm saying? Like, not everybody's like that. And I'm not mad at that either, because I kind of feel like that's the reality of how some people move. Like, it is what it is. But you got to watch that, because then it becomes a situation where it's like, do you work yourself out of the show in that regard because you ain't got nobody that you talk to? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Anyway, Kimmi pulls Stormi to the side to do a little check-in. Because Letitia had already told her that they had, what had happened down to the pool hall. Okay. Um, and I guess Letitia had made it seem like things were okay, but Stormi's like, no, girl, they're not okay. When she addressed the website issue, she felt like Letitia, was kind of like, well, it wasn't my fault, so get over it. Now, I don't feel like Letitia said that per se, but I did feel like, and you can see it in the flashback, that Letitia had a very laissez-faire attitude about the whole situation, a little bit too laissez-faire for my comfort, and I think a little bit too laissez-faire for Stormi's comfort too. And so, and I feel like Stormi had to coerce or cajole an apology out of Letitia for that whole website kerfuffle that happened. So Stormi, she realizes that when her feelings are off, she's just off with a person. But Kimmi is also like, well, if you felt so off, then why did you invite them for a date? Stormi is like, and I felt like that was a good point. And Stormi was like, well, I was trying to move past it. But then, honestly, I feel like they got there, and when the Scots were like an hour and a half late, and then the conversation like about the BITCH comes back up again. I don't even know how it came back up. It just turned things around altogether. And Stormi, she feels like, Marsau, especially with his culture comments, are like, trying to ruffle her feathers again, and she's not really trying to do that with him. And Kimmi in her confessional says, of course Marsau is a gaslighter. Of course he's condescending. Of course he's a smart ASS. But she says, of course, Stormi is also those things: a gaslighter, condescending, smart ASS, and passive aggressive. Okay. And I was like, Kimmi, I needed you to say that in the scene, baby. I need you to say it in the scene, baby. Because I feel like it would have been much more impactful then. However, Kimmi is the type of person I think that would say it to the facial when necessary. It could have been an afterthought that she had when she was really thinking about it later, because the confessionals are filmed later. So I'll give it that. Kimmi suggests that maybe her and Stormi and Letitia have another discussion, right? Because maybe it can be resolved. And Stormi's like, no, it can't. And so Kimmi is like, well, just create your own little safe space and safe haven once we get down to the Houston. What that I'm assuming that's going to mean that Stormi and Courtney might get their own house. That because Stormi was like, you know what, I'm going to take that advice. I really do honestly believe that they're going to get their own house. Now, I could be wrong. We'll see next episode if they prove me wrong, but I feel like I'm right. Because we'll get to that later. I don't feel like we saw them at the end of this episode when they all got to Houston. So anyway, Nell and Melody do a little check-in with Letitia about Stormi, and Nell reveals that Stormi gave her the tea on the website, and Letitia's like, well, my web designer used a template. No, girl, the template, the template was Stormi's website. If we want to, if that's what we want to call the template, that was a template. Okay, that there was a template, gal. And so she says that she could have been more hands-on. Yeah, she could have, instead of trying to leave it all to her manager and her assistant, how things go. And she feels like Stormi is sending mixed signals. And why is she talking to Nell about this? And I'm like, ain't that what we do on the show? Anyway, she feels like Stormi is not being real and she's being fake and tacky. Now, this is also echoed by Letitia in the interview that she just did with Letitia Pearson, which leads me to believe that the reunion didn't make things no better between Stormi and Letitia. Okay. So anyway, Marsau walks over to their conversation and he feels like they just need to get over it. The Beasleys and Courtney, they just need to get over it. They just all of them, the whole Canvas Beauty clan, they just need to get over it. And he says there's enough buffer here with enough people that they don't have to converse. Now, that is a good thing about having a big cast, because if people are not speaking, you can kind of almost not notice it. So the cast works in the fact that there are 18, like there are 20 people on the cast. And so if some of them don't talk to each other, that's actually fine. Okay. But it doesn't make for a good show when nobody wants to come into contact with each other. So somebody got to give, okay, at some point. Luckily, the couples have enough drama amongst themselves that sometimes we don't necessarily even need the rest of the cast to be at it with each other, right? And not that we always need some conflict, but that's what these shows are about: conflict resolution, feud, beef, then resolve. So anyway, Then the guys get together off to the side, and Marsau basically reasons that as long as the women and the men can stay apart, or at least keep the women and the men, in separate, then things should be fine, at least for the men. And so they wonder if Martell will bring a woman, okay? And Chris jokes that, well, you don't even have a woman no more, and she don't even have your last name, brother. And he's like, well, no, that's stupid mess anyway. That's stupid mess. Her changing her last name. Yes, she don't want to be near you. She don't want to have no ties to you, man. Matter of fact, without her, your relevancy on the show is kind of questionable to me based on how much you are utilized. Okay. Now, I know this will probably never happen before I say it, but I'm going to say it. It will be fascinating to see Martell interacting with his baby mama. Now, I'm just going to say it. I'm going to leave it alone. She probably won't do it. That probably won't ever happen, but I'm just going to say it. Okay. Anyway, because we did not believe that that sham of relationship they wanted, that Martell and Sheree had. Sham, flim flam, allegedly. Okay, allegedly. I don't know. Allegedly, everything's alleged. Martell and Sheree were alleged. Okay, if you want to believe it. Santa Claus is coming soon. So anyway, Letitia's like, well, Stormi and Courtney just gonna be quiet as a church mice in the corner anyway. So anyway, Nell then checks in with Melody about Houston, and she tells Nell, like, just keep me in another room way away from Martell with a locked door, a padlock, in a vault. Put me someplace in a vault. I'm actually surprised Melody's staying at the house, because in my mind, she would have been the person that would be like, I'm not going to stay there with you because I don't feel comfortable with him. So anyway, Nell then rides the bull, and boy, can Nell ride it. So anyway, we cut to Houston. We're just there, okay? I mean, they were like, we're not doing y'all at the airport. We're not doing y'all packing. We're not wasting not a single minute, okay? Now, part of me ain't mad about it, but part of me is like, I like seeing that. So why you take it away from me? So anyway, Nell and Chris arrive first. They're hosting, so they want the best room. Mel arrived next, and she just want to make sure her room is in the west wing, down the corner in the cellar, and away from Martell. Put him somewhere high up in the dungeon. And all of a sudden, Chris Fletcher is joking about, Melody and Martell. And Melody's like, now hold up. What you won't do is be mentioning my name and his name in the same sentence, even in jest, okay? So you better stop that stuff right now. Stop it. Don't be joking about any of it, because I'm not going to tolerate it. And if I do, if I hear it one more time, God will say go. And I will leave. Speaking of Unc, Martell arrives next, claiming to be unbothered that Melody is not speaking to him, or that she's even there or whatever like that. He has to, and in fact, he tells us about 10 times that he's unbothered. So I believe it now. So anyway, Kimmi and Maurice arrive next, and then Tiffany and Lewis, surprise, they're not coming, okay, due to some family issues. Marsau and Letitia then arrive next, or last in this instance. So Nell mentions that they have all decided the rooms based on certain relationships and situations, and she's looking around. Thank God somebody swerves past that comment so fast, and they get on to moving on to the rooms. So Kimmi and Maurice talk about doing their homework, sitting cross-legged Indian style on top of each other, in each other's face, whispering sweet nothings at each other. But first, before we get to that, we have got to talk about Maurice trying to apparently, Maurice trying to get the cookies from his wife is all over the internet due to Maurice's interview with Carlos King, and that moment went viral. Here is what he said in the interview clip that it really enraged all the people. He says, what Kimmi is doing is admirable as a spouse. To roll over and suffer through it. He looks at it like she's standing by him, and he's standing by her. Stand by your man. Or lay down for him, because that's what he really wants. Anyway, he says there's a difference between wants and needs. He's a person who actually needs the sex addiction, not a person who wants the sex, allegedly. And so Carlos says, well, why do you need the sex? He says, I need the sex like Carlos needs mess. So anyway, that clip went viral, and the internet dragged him for filth, and then they were dragging Kimmi for accepting this. Now, to me, Kimmy's very upset about this. And in my mind, to be honest with you, as much as Kimmi, I love you, this ain't no different from anything that he's been saying on the show. The only difference is that the internet is now talking about it, okay? Like, once upon a time, just the viewers were talking about it. But now, viewers and non-viewers are talking alike. I don't understand why you're offended now. You should have been offended the first time he said it, okay? Because now apparently Kimmi and her family's upset, and now she wants him to apologize to the family. But even as she's trying to reel him in through an apology by sitting cross-legged Indian style in his face, whispering sweet nothings, he's still kind of laughing about the whole situation and joking about how he's gonna make this apology. And I'm like, you ain't put him through the paces, girl. Ma'am, you ain't put him through the paces. You need to make him feel that, okay? But otherwise, he ain't said nothing new. There was no new information to me. It might have been new to the people on the internet, but for those who watched this show, none of what he said was new. So I'm not understanding what made this so different. I mean, I kind of feel like you should have been mad at him a long time ago. Tore him a new one for embarrassing you like that. Granted, what he said on the line was definitely given. She is my blow up doll. I mean, but he said it in far worse terms. But he has said similar things on the show, in my opinion. That's just me. So then Letitia and Marsau are in their room. They discuss Tiffany and Lewis, and Tiffany having the postpartum, which we do, say a prayer for. And she just, she talks about running into Tiffany and seeing the baby. The baby's so cute. Oh, by the way, did you know that I thought I was sick and I thought I was pregnant and I took a pregnancy test? Go figure. And you had a vasectomy. So wow, like, I mean, whose would it be? It must be Immaculate Conception. I'm birthing Jesus. And so he's looking at her like, that ain't funny. Because I'll be looking at you. If you was pregnant, I'd be looking at you like who you been sleeping with, essentially. And she's like, well, I don't get it. I mean, whatever. I wasn't pregnant. I mean, ha. And he's like, are you trying to pull a me on me? Are you pulling a Marsau on Marsau? Okay. And are you now the gaslighter? And so he's like, you got all these degrees. How do you think that this sounds coming out of your mouth, telling me that you think that you might be pregnant and I done had a vasectomy? How? And so he's like, and if you did get pregnant or whatever, he was like, I would demand a blood test. And she was like, if I did get a blood test when I took the pregnancy test, and if I took the blood test, I would leave you, okay? But even thinking that I would be out there in the streets cheating on you, because she's like, studies have shown, okay, that somebody can still get pregnant when you have had the vasectomy. Google it, okay? And then he calls her. He's like, oh, and I'm the gaslighter, okay? Basically indicating that she is gaslighting him here. And I'm like, I don't know if it's gaslighting as much as this conversation is just weird. Like, I mean, it's given unnecessary, right? Because did you really think that you were pregnant? That's the question. That remains to be seen. Anyway, she wants to stop the conversation because it's going left. Amen. Let me know what y'all think of this episode on a scale of 1 to 10. Let me know what you thought about who the gaslighter is. Is there a gaslighter on this show, and who are they and why? That is the question that I have to ask you. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I'm just glad that Juan Dixon is not here.